In 2004, NASCAR experienced one of the darkest days at Martinsville Speedway it has ever seen before. Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson were fantastic that afternoon. This definitely seemed like another Hendrick Motorsports domination day at Martinsville. And it was. Jimmy Johnson was able to pick up the victory and add more points to help him win a championship. Ultimately, that championship didn't come in 2004 for Jimmy Johnson, but what came after this race was a tragic event that changed the landscape of Hendrick Motorsports forever.
Let's go to Bill Weber. Thank you, Alan. Normally, we would go to Victory Lane at this point for the post-race celebration. That will not be the case today. I'm with Jim Hunter, who's NASCAR's Vice President of Corporate Communications. And, Jim, you have some very sad news.
Yes, we've been made aware the FAA reported they lost contact with a Hendrick Motorsports airplane inbound for Martinsville earlier today, Bill. We don't have a lot of details or a lot of information, but I know the FAA and the NTSB are investigating, and we've been in contact with Rick Hendrick, and we're in contact with his entire organization, and we just don't have a lot of details at the moment. But we're going to say an extra prayer for everyone in the Hendrick organization at this time.
This was an extremely tragic day for NASCAR and the Hendrick Motorsports family. Thankfully, Hendrick Motorsports was able to continue on or rebuild from this horrible accident. Hendrick Motorsports still thrives to be one of the greatest NASCAR teams ever in existence, and still to this day they do so. But this day will never be forgotten. In 1992, Davey Allison was almost invincible. He would wreck one week, win the next. Wreck the one week, win the next. He had gotten injured so many times this season that he was still able to pursue a championship, and he almost won it. In the final race of the season, Davey Allison would be able to be in great contention to win the championship. Unfortunately, he would get wrecked out and his season would be over. And unfortunately, fate had other ideas for Davey Allison. Just 1 year later, in 1993, we would lose one of the toughest drivers in NASCAR. Davey Allison would die in Alabama after a helicopter crash.
Davey Allison, a member of the first family of racing, died today from injuries he received in a helicopter crash yesterday. Allison, who was 32, leaves his wife and 2 children and marks yet another tragic affair in the lives of this famous racing family.
The 2020 Daytona 500 was, in my opinion, one of the greatest Daytona 500s we've ever seen up until the finish. The racing from start to finish was amazing up until that very moment that everything changed.
Backed up to Blaney, big run coming here.
To the inside, Newman to the front.
Nothing Denny Hamlin could do. What can Ryan Blaney now do? Here comes a push from Denny Hamlin. Oh, this thing's not over yet. Not at all.
Ryan Newman off turn 4 for the final time. Blaney to the outside, to the inside. Here comes Hamlin up the outside.
Wow.
Crash into the wall, into the air. Goes Newman.
Upside down.
In a shower of sparks on his roof, Ryan Newman comes across the line, 4th. And comes to rest. Scoring unofficial between Hamlin and Blaney as far as who crossed the finish line first.
After Denny Hamlin had crossed the line and completed the race, all attention was focused on Ryan Newman as his car laid upside down with fuel pouring out of his race car as it was on fire. In my opinion, this was one of the darkest days for NASCAR in the last 20 years. This was a horrifying accident that had just taken place with millions of fans watching. Everybody expected the worst, and everybody thought when NASCAR went off the air that very night, we would never see Ryan Newman again. But thankfully, Newman survived this horrible accident and was still able to continue racing. But this was one of the darkest days for Daytona we've seen in over 20 years.
Tries to go to the outside, then the inside. They lock bumpers and turns Ryan Newman around. Upside down he goes. Corey LaJoie coming along, making contact.
Just lifting Newman's car up and over. And it comes to rest on its roof. Here is the second closest finish in Daytona 500 history. Denny Hamlin the winner in both of them. This time it is Ryan Blaney finishing second. Blaney tried the top side, tried to get low. Ryan Newman goes around, and the car goes to its roof, and here's the on-rushing Corey LaJoie picking it up and over.
The 90s in NASCAR was definitely a different time for safety. Nobody expected the 1994 Speed Weeks to be as tragic as they were, but it was one of the most horrific things that Daytona has ever experienced at this time of racing. There were so many accidents over Speed Weeks that took the drivers' lives, it's just unbelievable that it even happened. But probably most notably, it took the life of Neil Bonnet. Neil Bonnet was one of the most liked drivers in the NASCAR garage area. He was friends with about every driver that he came in contact with, and this was one of the most tragic days in NASCAR history.
The wreck happened in turn 4. Neil Bonnet's car slammed hard into the outside wall. Running in windy conditions, another driver said Bonnet appeared to simply lose control of the car. Bonnet was attempting a comeback to the NASCAR circuit this year. Those who saw the wreck knew it was bad from the moment it happened.
I mean, they covered the car up. They had to cut the top of the car off, but they covered the car. They didn't let nobody take any pictures. Nothing.
Bonnet was rushed to the nearby Halifax Medical Center trauma unit. Outside, longtime friend Davey Allison waited with other friends of Bonnet. Allison, who lost racing sons Davey and Clifford in the past 2 years, told me he understood why I was there, but under the circumstances, he didn't feel like talking.
In New Hampshire today,
fourth-generation member of stock car racing's most famous family
was killed today in an accident on the track. The 19-year-old Petty died of head injuries after he crashed during practice for a race tomorrow at the New Hampshire International Speedway. Adam Petty was the son of current driver Kyle Petty, grandson of Richard, and the great-grandson of NASCAR pioneer Lee Petty.
I was here in the body shop. Somebody come and got me and said, hey, somebody needs you on telephone. And Hilton had called and said, Adam just had a terrible accident, said it don't look good.
May 12, 2000 would change the landscape of NASCAR's youngest generation forever. Young star and absolute phenom in the feeder series in NASCAR, Adam Petty was the fourth generational driver of the Pettys. He was excellent, winning races left and right. He had extreme potential to be one of NASCAR's next superstars. But May 12, 2000, unfortunately in a practice session at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, his life would be taken way too early. This changed the entire landscape of how NASCAR saw the Pettys going forward. Adam Petty was supposed to be one of the newest stars in NASCAR drive, to be as great as his grandfather Richard Petty, and he had the potential, but we unfortunately never got to see it.